Are Emojis a New Business Crisis? By Vicki M. Luoma from Minnesota State University, Mankato, Minnesota, and Milton Luoma, Metropolitan State University, St. Paul, Minnesota. These emojis have created a lot of problem in the workplace, and it's going to continue. Why? Well, the first big reason is there's a lack of a definitive meaning of each of the emojis. What does a smiley face emoji mean? What does a kiss look like? What does if I send you a picture of an ear of corn, what do these things mean? Well, there's a lot of problems in trying to figure out what the meanings are. First, I can take a picture of a little cute pig off of my iPhone and send it to you. And what I'm meaning is, I remember as a child going to my aunt's farm, and it's such a happy little memory. You get it, but it comes out looking very, very grossly overweight on yours, and you think I'm making fun of your weight. What if, so you have the different designs, and each type of thing, whether it's the iPhone or the iPad or Androids or whatever device you have, it can come out differently. It doesn't necessarily look like the one I sent you. In addition, different emojis can mean different things to people based on where they work. We could have created our own language at our particular place of work, meaning if we put up a farmer, we're making fun of our boss. If we put up a pig, we're making fun of Fred. If we put up a kiss, we're saying that Sally is overly flirty. And we might have our own little language, which doesn't coincide with the language that most people see these designs to meet. For example, pedophiles have come up with their own emojis meaning all kinds of different things, which is making it extremely difficult for our law enforcement to charge them. And a different new designs are being developed constantly, not just from the different companies, the phone companies, and different art communities, but any eighth grader with some talent can come up with their own emoji. And lastly, a particular emoji can mean different things to different people based on their history, their gender, their age, their experiences. And so you can have problems where one person in the group at your workplace will take an emoji as being anything sexual harassment, threatening, making fun of, and you don't know anything about it, nor does the person who maybe sent it. There's all kinds of factors that will affect person's personal meanings of an emoji. You get an emoji, what does that mean to you? Well, it can make a difference based on your culture, your gender, your age, your life experience, your education, your religious beliefs, all kinds of things. If I sent you an email and had this eggplant at the bottom of it, what would it mean to you? If I received it, I would think, I haven't had eggplant parmesan for a while, and I really like eggplant parmesan. Maybe you're offering to make an eggplant for me. If you're under 18, you probably see it as sexual. Almost all young teens find vegetables as meaning something sexual. It probably would never think of it for an older person with different life experiences. The big problem that emojis create in the workplace is, again, what do these emojis mean? 92% of all employees have used some form of emojis at some time, maybe a smiley person, maybe a big smile on its own, but people are using them in the workplace. Courts have accepted emojis as a form of language, so the court will review them if they can find them and try to determine what the person meant. Right now, there are over 21 million emojis and counting. As we speak, there are emojis being created. And the big problem in the workplace and in the world in general is, does the emoji change the meaning of the sentence? So if I put something up and I put a smiley face, can it mean just the opposite of what my words just said? How does the court determine that? How do you as an employer decide whether your employee is causing problems or not? That's one of the big issues that you have to look at as an employer. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. There was a gentleman who was going through a divorce with his wife. He was quite angry. He didn't want the divorce, and his wife said he was making threats to her. He was sending her text messages and emails that would include such language as, there is only one way to love you, but 1,000 ways to kill you. And at the end of the message, he'd put this little happy face with the tongue sticking out. What does that mean? Is he saying he's trying to kill her, or is he just joking? I will not rest until your body is a mess, soaked in blood and dying from all the little cuts. Again, the same happy little face. Is he making a threat or not? She said absolutely not. He says, I was just joking with her. I have that kind of a weird sense of humor. So what happened in this case? Well, the trial court found him making terroristic threats, and they gave him a jail term, as did the appellate court. But when we went to the state Supreme Court, they said, no, we don't think so. We don't like the instructions you gave the jury about what emojis meant. So they found him not guilty. He then was recharged. The prosecution corrected the language that the Supreme Court didn't like, and he was convicted. He was in prison for several years. He gets out and starts the same behavior again. So how does the court look at this and make a determination? Is this threats or not? How would you take this if you receive this? Are you being threatened? Can an emoji on its own determine sexual harassment at work? Must you look at the text along with it? Must you look to try to interpret what was meant? There's been no case in the United States so far in which a emoji itself has determined sexual harassment, but the court has looked at it along with the rest of the picture. The courts have ruled that emojis are a form of free speech, and you have a right to free speech. But just like all free speech, there are also consequences if the speech is harassment, if it's sexual harassment, if it's threatening, and so on. In one case, the boss had been sending some messages to his employee that were somewhat suggestive, and she returned the messages with kissy lips, and she called him my darling. The court said that they didn't feel that it was sexual harassment, and that they felt that she was giving permission by these emojis. So in that case, it hurt her case rather than helped it. But what if you put a kissy face along with something like just good work, nice program, something that was very mild, but all of a sudden now we have something that looks romantic, the little penguin with the flowers. The courts are struggling through this now, trying to determine what play emojis do in lawsuits. So far, in the United States, an emoji has not been the deciding factor, but they have been a contributing part of the lawsuit. We have this emoji problem all over the world, and there was a case in Israel where a landlord was listing his property, and this young couple wrote and asked questions about it, wanted to know the terms of the lease. The landlord sent them the terms of the lease. The young couple sent back a OK sign. The landlord took that to mean that they had agreed to the rental terms. The young couple said no, they were just saying, yeah, we got it. The courts determined that they had agreed to the contract, and they were stuck with the contract. So it's going to depend on a court-by-court basis. Another question, does the emoji style matter? Well, again, it's going to be at the interpretation of both the recipient and the intent of the sender. But in one very interesting case out of New York, a woman claimed that her boss had been sexually harassing her. She provided some very strong emails that looked like that they were sexual harassment, but on one of them she included a happy face with hard eyes, and that was her downfall, because the opposing side forensic expert was able to prove that that particular version of the smiley face with the hard eyes had not been developed at the time of these emails were supposedly sent. So it can make a big difference in a lawsuit, and plus the fact maybe one of them will look different than the other. The use of emoji may have started out to give the receiver an idea of what your emotions were when you sent it. Were you joking, sort of the laugh out loud of LOL days, or was it trying to express an opinion that you couldn't quite put into words? But now what's happening is there's a whole lot of problems trying to determine what is the meaning of an emoji. And then is to determine not only what was the intent of the sender at the time, did they mean it friendly, but what did the receiver see it as? And which standard do we go by? Do we look at who sent the message and what their meaning was? Or do we use the standard of whoever the receiver was and how did they take the meaning? This is going to be very important in sexual harassment lawsuits in the future. Again, what is the meaning of emoji? We already talked about the fact that it can be different from what the sender thinks it means versus what the recipient thinks it means. There was one case that a gentleman had been still on probation, and every time his boss sent an email including his name, beside his name she put a frowny face, and this went around the entire office. Eventually the boss fired this guy, and he sued on the grounds of harassment, and the court said since he was still under probation that you had to show malice before there was a case, and they decided a frowny face next to his name was not to the standard of malice. Whether you agree or not, that's what that particular court said, and who knows what the next court will say. Showing you a picture of a peach, and I'm asking you, what do you see when you see a peach? I look at something and I see, wow, that looks good, and I wouldn't mind having a peach right now. In some circles, it means that you're being mooned. So if you receive a peach, is somebody saying something very negative to you? What does it mean to be mooned? Is this just a big chuckle, or is this a form of harassment? Now we get to the big issue of emoji use in business. What is the proper use of emojis in the workplace, if at all? Should a company make a rule that says absolutely no emojis in the workplace? There was a study done in the Netherlands that says that they are perceived as not being as professional if you have an emoji in it. On the other hand, you have some people with language problems where maybe emojis is the best way to communicate. Does a company decide to come up with a list of appropriate emojis and what the meanings are? So regardless of what you see, you're going to see a peach no matter what, because the boss has decided a peach is a peach. What is there going to be a change going on? Does every emoji has to be approved? And then what if people don't comply with these rules that the company has about emojis? At the present time, it is impossible for any of the software searching through all the electronic data to find most emojis. There's only one company's software that can identify about 1,000 different emojis. And as we talked earlier, there are billions of emojis. So far, the cases involving emojis are just the ones where the plaintiff or the defendant bring up the fact that there is a particular emoji that they would like to be part of this litigation. If there's just some buried there, then it's almost impossible to find at the present day. So again, when a company must comply with electronic discover, is it safer for them to tell them that no emojis are allowed at the workplace this time? And how do you enforce it? Businesses need to take action now before it becomes a huge problem in their place of employment. They must consider the fact that there will be litigation that will involve an emoji, and they will need to be able to determine what these emojis meant. They need to determine if they had a policy concerning the use of emojis. You may also have to have some type of retrieval policy concerning litigation. You don't want to be given sanctions in litigation because you can't get this retrieved as needed. Does the company come up with their own procedure to collect emojis as you save your data? Must they find a software company that has the ability to find these emojis? What is the balance in this? The companies must start approaching it now before they have a problem. And they need to make policies that they can follow and explain to their employees. When a company comes up with a policy, they need to be looking at what does these different emojis mean to different groups of people. Can they be used in a wrongful termination, a sexual harassment, cultural discrimination, gender discrimination? What does this happy little dog mean? In a culture where dogs are considered unclean, does it mean something more than just a happy little dog? There is litigation involving emojis in the United States alone that involves criminal cases, international cases, civil cases, workplace cases, and a business needs to be aware of it, and they need to get on ahead of this problem now. First, look at the cow. Is that offensive? Is it friendly? Is it culturally inappropriate? Again, companies need to be aware of these things ahead of time and be planning this with their employees. Maybe employees will use the cute little things like this with not thinking about the fact they could be offensive to some groups of people. Again, education is the best policy within a company. You have to be aware that in electronic discovery, each company must provide the data. If there is litigation or a threat of a litigation, they must have this saved and ready for retrieval. And as I mentioned before, that is a problem when it comes to emojis. E-discovery software is not equipped to find emojis on most incidents. There is one format. It's called the RSMF format, and it can find 1,000 emojis. Just one company, the Slack company, has over 26 million emojis, and they're increasing every second of the day. How are you going to talk to your own attorneys about finding emojis? What are you going to give instructions to your employees if they are allowed to use emojis? Is there some special tag you need to ask? Are you going to require your employees, when they do an emoji, make a list and say, this is what I meant when I sent it? Must you find the recipient and say, how did you take it? What did this mean to you when you saw this little cow with his arms open? Did it mean anything special to you? Again, preparation is everything. In conclusion, this is an issue that's becoming bigger and bigger each and every day. Management must react to this issue and must be involved and have plans before it becomes a problem within their company. Management of a company must determine how are they going to monitor the usage, what is their emoji policy, what happens if an employee violates the directives, and you have to know how to retrieve these emojis. The safest thing to do is just disallow them until you can catch up with training and you can catch up with software that can find them, and people can find out with the courts on how they're going to accept them or reject them in various litigation. Thank you very much for this. I've enjoyed this research and this presentation. If you have any questions, please get a hold of me or my husband at any time. Thank you.